Good evening. I'd like to call the Village of Vernon Village Board and Plan Commission joint meeting to order. Today is December 9, 2020. With the Pledge of Allegiance and a standing moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. Roll call and open meeting law compliance check.
President Carl Fortner.
Present.
Trustee Jim Sloney.
Present.
Trustee Gary Wildy.
Present.
Trustee Fred Mahalik.
Present.
Trustee Lorene Dakshik.
Present.
Mr. President, note for record, you have a quorum of your village board. Mr. President, I'll call the roll call for the Plan Commission. President Carl Fortner.
Present.
Commissioner Trustee Jim Sloney.
Present.
Commissioner Trustee Fred Mahalik.
Present.
Commissioner Dan Noack.
Present.
Commissioner Jamie Sleesman.
Present.
Mr. President, note for the record, you have a quorum of your Plan Commission. Mr. President, the agenda was posted inside and outside the Vernon Town Hall to the media on the Village of Vernon's website. You're in full compliance to the open meetings law.
Thank you. I will read the notice in the agenda and then we'll open the public hearing. Notice is hereby given that public hearings by the Vernon Village Board and Plan Commission will be held on Wednesday, December 9, 2020 at 7 p.m. at the Village of Vernon Hall located at W249S8910 Center Drive to take comments on a Village of Vernon's request to amend the Village of Vernon Zoning Code, Section 300-22, Article 5, Conditional Uses, and the Village of Vernon Land Division Control Ordinance, Section 200-9, Subdivision Definition, and Section 200-27, Residential Development Control, and to adopt the Village of Vernon's Floodplain Ordinance. All parties will be heard. Legal notice was published in the Waukesha Freeman on November 25, 2020, and December 2nd, 2020, and posted on November 16, 2020, inside and outside the Vernon Village Hall and on the village website. So with that, I will open the public hearing, and how we do this public hearing is we are going to have our planner, Sean Malarkey, give us an overview of each of these items. It's a combined public hearing, and then we will have the board and the Plan Commission opportunity to ask questions, although we've been through these ordinances several times on the Plan Commission and at the board level. So, but feel free to raise questions, then we'll open it up to members of the public for their comment. So Sean, why don't you please kick us off?
Thank you. I'll start with the changes to the zoning ordinance related to conditional uses. Essentially, back in 2017, Wisconsin Act 67 changed the legislation related to conditional uses. So essentially, conditional uses are permitted uses provided that the applicant can provide substantial evidence that they can meet reasonable conditions set forward in the ordinance, that they can meet them or will meet them. We started to look, basically about a year ago, we started the process to look at this. And what we've done is, out of the 27 conditional uses that are currently in our code, we've gone through, at this point in time, we've stricken a number of them, and then we've added a couple of additional uses in. Essentially, what this means is that once, and the reason for the striking of the conditional uses is the fact that we found that many of the conditional uses that are listed in our ordinance don't have adequate conditions to protect the village. So essentially, if someone came in with a conditional use permit for an animal hospital, for instance, which was a conditional use, there was inadequate conditions set forth in the ordinance, so that it was very easy there were little consideration given to the conditions in the ordinance. So it's easy to get approved for one of those things. There's almost no way to say no to something that gets presented as a conditional use if there aren't adequate conditions set up in the ordinance itself. So we found a number of those that we've stricken for now. Many of those can be added back in the future as the village amends their ordinance and comes up with our own new conditions for these uses, or in conjunction with Waukesha County, who's also going to be going through this process starting next year, updating their conditional use ordinance for the same reasons as we've done. And a lot of our conditions in our conditional uses are similar to those that are in the ordinance. So it'd be good for us to take a look at what they're doing, see if it makes sense for us, and then add them or tweak them at the same time. Otherwise, if someone came forward and we're striking animal hospitals from our conditional use ordinance, for instance, they can certainly propose to have the ordinance amended to re-add that conditional use to it, like event barns happened. And so at that time, we could establish appropriate conditions for that particular use. So in essence, we had 27 conditional uses in our ordinance. We've stricken a number of them. I'll quickly go through what was stricken. Agricultural businesses was stricken. Animal hospitals, vet clinics, commercial kennels stricken. Antique shops, gift shops, arts and craft studios, and similar uses. Those were allowed in the residential and the business districts. Those have been stricken. Automobile service stations, cemeteries and mausoleums, churches, synagogues, and other buildings. Commercial fish, bait, ponds, and hatcheries. Commercial stables, limited family businesses, motels and hotels, multifamily units and condos. Other uses, which is a blanket sort of open-ended interpretation. Private clubs, such as gun clubs, hunting preserves, shooting ranges, etc. Quarrying, restaurants, supper clubs, lake resorts, taverns, and similar uses. Again, those are in the residential and ag districts, not in the commercial districts. Solid waste facilities, special care facilities, and telecommunication facilities. And then we've added 2 uses. One is the event barn, which came to us through the other uses category, where it was proposed and we established specific conditions for that use. It's now being codified with its extensive conditions that were established. Now it's in the ordinance. And then in place of telecommunication facilities, we've added wireless telecommunication mobile service facilities, which is a much more comprehensive look at the regulations for those facilities. As you know, state and federal law prohibits a lot of restrictions or certain restrictions for those. And so the new conditional use for wireless telecommunication facilities allows us to regulate as much as possible based on the current laws. We've also added some language with respect to presenting substantial evidence and the review considerations for conditional uses in general. And then we've also added, since we're striking so many conditional uses at this time, we've added a provision that recognizes and protects any existing conditional use permit. So if you have an existing conditional use permit for a motel or a hotel, for instance, you'd be able to continue that use clearly, but you could also modify that use under the language, even though it's not currently a conditional use in the code. You'd modify it based on what was in place in the code at the time that it was issued. So that provides some protections for those that have conditional uses for some of these uses that are being stricken at least temporarily. And again, we've made the changes to the use matrix that's a part of the zoning code that describes which of these conditional uses are allowed in which particular district. So that's updated as well. So that's an overview for the conditional use changes in the zoning ordinance. I'll switch gears here and go to the land division ordinance. We made changes to a couple sections here. One of them is the definition for a subdivision and what constitutes a subdivision. In the town of Vernon and now the village of Vernon, the definition for what is a subdivision is fairly limited. It's basically 3 things. One is more than 4 parcels, less than 1.5 acres in a 5-year period. So if you exceed that, you're a subdivision. And what that means is you can't do land division by certified survey map anymore. You have to do it by a subdivision plat, which is certainly more cumbersome and costly to do. The second thing that constitutes a subdivision is more than 2 parcels of any size in any given year, or more than 6 lots of any size in 5 years. And the anomaly here, compared to other communities in Waukesha County itself, and the state requirements or definition of a subdivision plat is the second one, the more than 2 parcels of any size in any given year. So once you hit the 3 parcels, there's 3 lots created in any given year, you're suddenly a subdivision, which is much more restrictive than any surrounding community at Waukesha County and the state as a whole. So what we're essentially proposing for the subdivision ordinance definition is to match that of surrounding communities in Waukesha County. And so the first provision and the third provision remain the same, but the second provision would essentially be changed to say successive divisions within a 5-year period which create 5 or more parcels or building sites of 1.5 acres each or less. So what that allows you to do is you could do up to 5 in any 5 years, any 5-year period, and still be considered a land division through certified survey map. And so that's the change there to be more consistent with surrounding communities. And then switching gears, but staying within the land division control ordinance, the subdivision ordinance, we've made modifications to the residential development control section. And what that is the section that allows the Plan Commission to review proposed subdivisions to see if they can, to determine the quality of development. If they don't exceed a certain quality threshold for their subdivision, they wouldn't be approved for a subdivision. They wouldn't be issued a permit for residential development in that case. And so this already exists on the books. We were through the process with the Pheasant Run subdivision. We ran into a bunch of different issues with the existing system, one of which was that a lot of the information that was required up front, such as preliminary subdivision approval, was pretty cumbersome to ask for. It was costly to ask for something that the developer wouldn't even know if they were going to get approval through the process or be able to even submit a subdivision plat. So we've modified some of the conditions, the precursor to the submittal, to make it not overly burdensome and not costly, while still giving us the information that we need to make a determination. When we went through the Pheasant Run subdivision and followed the process, we found that it wasn't necessarily easy to score subjectively or objectively. We wanted to minimize subjectivity. We wanted to make sure that what was in the criteria for determining a quality plat reflects high quality residential development. We found that some of the criteria were ambiguous and the meaning wasn't clear across categories. Some of the categories overlapped and were duplicative, and that the scoring and thresholds that were assigned each category would reflect the actual priorities of Vernon. So over the course of a few months, we sat down, we went through the process, and we revamped the scoring system for the residential development control. Essentially, what's needed to even be able to submit a plat in Vernon now is proposed for 10 total points. There's 20 points allowable. All you need to get is 10 points. The Plan Commission has discretion on awarding points, and the points are guidelines. Basically, the Plan Commission has the right to interpolate between the minimum and maximum points for any category. If it's found that a category doesn't apply for a specific piece of land, you can subtract 1 point that's needed. So when 10 points are normally needed, if you find that a category is not applicable, then you can strike 1, and then only 9 points are needed for that. And then part of that, there's a worksheet that goes along with it that the Plan Commission and staff scores, come to some consensus at the end of the process, and determine how many points are actually awarded for a proposed subdivision. And just very quickly, the categories, you can get up to 2 points for sanitary disposal. You get the bonus for if you're public sewer, which isn't currently available, or if there's an engineered COM 83 sanitary system. You get up to 2 points for the category of visibility from collector or arterial roads, essentially minimizing visibility. You can get up to 2 points for preservation of wooded areas that are not primary or secondary corridors or an isolated natural resource area. You can get up to 3 points for the density category based on our land use plan map. Essentially, if you're using less of the density allowable, you can get bonus points for that. You can get up to 3 points for preservation of open space. The more open space, the better. Up to 2 points for preservation of environmentally sensitive areas. That is the environmental corridors, isolated natural resource areas. Up to 2 points for improving circulation. And then up to 4 points for site and architectural standards, which includes entrance monument signage, landscaping, home size, and quality of exterior materials on homes. So in essence, that's what it is now. 20 total points, up to 10 is needed for a approval of a residential development permit to move forward with the subdivision ordinance. And then I should also note that there was another section in the subdivision ordinance where it was an allotment system tied to the residential development control. And essentially, what it said is that only a certain number of permits per year were issued. It was tied to something, a policy that was found outside of the subdivision ordinance, but we removed that section from the ordinance entirely. So at this point, there's no specific number of permits that get issued per year. If you have a quality enough subdivision, you meet the land division ordinance, you can move forward with the subdivision ordinance. If there comes a time when we think that there's too much development happening, we could always add that back in to require an allotment process and only a certain number of permits issued per year, but that's not something that is a concern at this point. So that's the land division ordinance changes. And then finally, the floodplain ordinance. What you have is the adoption of a new floodplain ordinance for the village of Vernon. We've always been operating under the Waukesha County Shoreline and Floodplain Protection Ordinance. We're still operating under that ordinance, but we're administering it as the village because we're no longer a town. We're required by law to adopt our own floodplain ordinance within a certain period of time, which is what we're moving forward to do. We are, as a side note, and I've mentioned before, we're also working on the shoreline zoning portion of that. So there's the floodplain zoning and there's the shoreline zoning. They're two different things. The shoreline zoning is the area within 300 feet of rivers and streams and 1,000 feet of lakes and ponds. And so that's moving forward as well. And we're going to be bringing that back in the next couple of months to move forward on that. In formulating the floodplain ordinance, we worked closely with Wisconsin DNR to use their model ordinance, which we've updated in a few locations. There's some better practices that they wanted incorporated, so that is in our new latest and greatest floodplain ordinance. Once it's adopted, if it's adopted, recommended by the Plan Commission, adopted by the village board by ordinance, then the application can be filed to DNR with a resolution, which is another agenda item further down, to join the National Flood Insurance Program. So we would be administering the floodplain ordinance. That would give us the right to continue. So people with property within the floodplains, buildings with the floodplain, can continue to get flood insurance. The only real comment I want to make about the floodplain ordinance, again, it regulates the floodway, the flood fringe, general floodplain district, flood storage district. It's pretty typical stuff. It's done everywhere in the state of Wisconsin for every community, whether it's at the county level or at the village and city level. You have a draft of the ordinance in front of you. There's two changes that have been made since you had that draft. DNR contacted us and said that basically there was two maps that weren't referenced in the ordinance, and so section 1.5 sub 2 sub A, where it talks about the official map, which is the reference to all the flood insurance rate maps and flood insurance studies, also known as the panels. We've added two panel numbers to that, and those are panel 55133C 0218G and panel 55133C 0331G. So those are in the latest version. You don't have those, but I'm adding those into the public hearing record tonight to be added as part of the ordinance if adopted.
Sean?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the first one, please?
55133C0218G. And so just give you some general frame of reference, since we're now going to be administering our own floodplain ordinance. The Plan Commission serves as the zoning agency that oversees the enforcement of the floodplain ordinance, oversees the work of the zoning administrator, which is me currently. And so I would be the one administering on a day-to-day basis, but the Plan Commission is responsible for oversight of that for me. The Zoning Board of Appeals that currently exists, just like they do appeals and disputes and variances for the zoning ordinance, would handle the same responsibility for the floodplain ordinance. And so the way the floodplain ordinance works with the zoning ordinance, they both apply, right? They both sit on top of each other, and any development that comes forward has to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance, but also the requirements of the floodplain ordinance, where you can build, how you build, and so on. So that's all I have for an overview of the revisions to the zoning ordinance, revisions to the land division ordinance, and the adoption of the new floodplain ordinance.
John, since we posted on November, and published on November 16, our Attorney Macy had, some comments, and I think they were transmitted to us on November 20th.
Right.
Could we go through those and make sure that we are picking up everything that you concur with and what those would be? So, I don't know which one you want to start with.
I don't know if I have a copy of his full comments. I know I did send an email out and not everybody got it. I sent it back to Attorney Macy, the clerk, and the president. Effectively, he had some minor comments that I made changes to for clarity. But he also had some comments on 3 of the uses. And so for the conditional uses, he had questions or just commented on quarrying, special care facilities, and solid waste facilities. And his comments were that, if you recall, when my first draft came forward, I left quarrying and I didn't strike it. There's a pretty comprehensive list of conditions associated with quarrying operations for conditional uses in the village code. We did discuss that as a group. Even though they were extensive, we didn't spend the time at this point to determine, because changes happen all the time in quarrying and what the state statutes say you can and can't regulate. So we decided as a group, with the Plan Commission and later as the board, to strike it for now. If someone to propose a quarry, we would then reintroduce conditions that were in line with state statute requirements. He only questioned it because he just wanted to make sure that everyone understood what was happening. So if someone came through with a quarry at the time, there are certain provisions in the state statutes that say that that whatever conditions are proposed need to be reasonable and found reasonable. And so he didn't definitively come down one way or the other. He just wanted to make sure that everyone was aware that there could be potentially an issue there, because if there's nothing in the code for quarrying uses, that, you know, it's uncertain what the outcome would be. What I would say is just the same as I've been saying all along. If someone proposes a quarry or a motel or whatever it is, we need to add it back into the zoning ordinance and establish reasonable conditions at that time. So same for solid waste facilities and same for special care facilities. The other thing about special care facilities is that certain care facilities are permitted by right, by state statute. And that is basically any group home with 8 or fewer residents is basically permitted by right in residential districts. And that's the case in our code now, and that's the way it's written in our code now. So we're not changing that. We're only removing the conditional use section, and that basically would encompass any group home for 9 or more residents. And that's not necessarily a protected use per state statutes. And so that if someone proposed a nursing home or a group home for 9 or more, we would do the same process that we've been talking about. We'd add it back in. We put reasonable conditions on at that particular time. So, Mr. President, I'm not sure he came down one way or the other on that. He just wanted people to be aware that those 3 uses have some protections in state statutes, and he wanted to make sure that everyone's aware. If we take them out now and someone to propose one of those uses, that it's uncertain what the process would be.
Okay, yeah.
Is that fair? Do you think there's anything else to add to that?
I think that's fair for Chapter 300 conditional uses, and I would concur that we as a board and a plan commission agreed to strike those. They were raised, and so I wanted to make sure everybody knew that Attorney Macy raised them and what his concerns were on November 20th. But I think he did make
He did.
other minor changes, which are going to be picked up.
For clarity, for the subdivision ordinance, we tweaked a couple of words in the definition of subdivision ordinance to make it clear. There's a couple other minor changes. There's one of the changes related to the density requirement for residential development control. He wanted to make sure that it was based on a percentage of density, not the way we originally had it written was the middle third, upper third, bottom third, and he said that's not typically how density is discussed, and so now it's written in a percentage capacity, 75% versus the thirds. So nothing substantive has been changed. It was all for clarity.
So those changes were made that he suggested making on his November 20th
Correct.
Letter. So those are made also. Okay, and then, let's let's see, what else did he have? He had,
Mr. President, can I?
he had a couple of minor ones on the matrix. I assume you made those.
And I made those, correct.
Right, you made those. And then on the floodplain ordinance,
Formatting. He had a
yeah,
couple
formatting and a
questions.
couple of non-substantive
We,
changes.
we changed those, we ran it past DNR, and they had no issue with them, and so that's good to go as well.
Okay,
I have a question, Mr. President.
yep.
In regard to.
Your mic, Gary?
Pardon? Yes, it
Okay,
is.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have
Closer,
this.
Fred.
Yeah.
If, in regard to the conditional uses, in the past, we had problems with I'll just example the event barn, and all the meetings and everything, are we gonna put the future boards at risk in regard to discussions of long meetings and continuous event, meetings that, how many meetings, Carl, we went through.
Right.
Now, if another conditional use comes in, is this gonna, by taking these all out, is it gonna have to go through the whole thing all over again, like 2, 3, you know how many meetings we went through?
I mean, I could answer, I could jump
yeah.
in. Potentially, it could, but that's not necessarily the end game here. We, again, the point was to take them out now to protect ourselves so that people couldn't petition for specific conditional uses without appropriate
Well,
conditions.
they can anyway, can't they, Sean?
They can, but we can ensure at that point that conditions are established that would protect the village. But the idea is that as Waukesha County updates some of these over the next year, that we can piggyback on that and take the best of what they have as part of these and maybe get 75% of them back in. Some of these are stricken and are probably never going to occur in Vernon, right? Some of these are in there as carryovers from Waukesha County's zoning ordinance that applies to the entire county itself. And so there may be 1 or 2 of them that come along over the years that says, hey, I want to do this or that, and we will have to establish conditions. We'll have to hold a public hearing to amend the zoning ordinance. It's a little different than with the event barn, because the event barn was in the other uses category.
Yeah.
So this is different. All this would be is amending the code to add that conditional use back in with a list of conditions. The process is similar, but it's a little bit different than.
Would it be a
last time
long process? Would there have to be numerous meetings in regard to this?
No, all that's required is 1 public hearing. right?
Okay.
So it could be, if it's a simple enough and the conditions are good enough, it could be a process of just 1 meeting
Okay,
to add it back in. But it depends how complicated it is. Event barns are so complicated because
yeah,
they're essentially a commercial use in a residential area, and so there's all these things that you have to think about,
okay,
where some of these are maybe not quite as complicated.
okay. I just get a little.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I mean, and the Plan Commission discussed those at length when we talked about what was going to get struck, and I do recall that things were, in order to protect Vernon because of Act 67 and the presumption against the municipality, and if we didn't have standards, we would have to approve, we were forced to approve it.
Yeah.
We struck those to protect Vernon and, its property owner, taxpayers and residents, with the idea that we were going to revisit it when Waukesha County went through and get their thinking, and then maybe have another public hearing and put something back in, if the Plan Commission and the board felt that was
Appropriate at the time.
appropriate to
If they
put
thought
it
the
back
conditions-
in.
if they
But
thought
in the
conditions were
meantime,
good
we
enough.
could always fall back to what Sean's saying is, they can come and petition, and we could do it at that point in time. I prefer not to do it that way.
Right.
I prefer to have it in what we're gonna allow in the code and be done.
I would
but think-
agree, and so I would work with Waukesha County as they do that. They're gonna be doing a lot of research on conditional uses and conditions, and so outside of what I would be able to do based on their staff, and so
I just had some concerns about
we
it.
would piggyback.
Yeah,
on
that's a
that.
fair point.
So part of it, though, is due to how cooperative, I don't know if that's the right term, that the petitioner is, and how many changes they come up with. So we could have multiple meetings on just about any subject, just depending on,
Correct.
how that part goes.
But I would certainly, if someone proposed something that wasn't on the list, just like with the event barn, I would be the first person to say, okay, well, here are the 10 conditions that I think are appropriate for this particular use. see if they agree with it. If they don't agree, it's never gonna get into the
Okay.
code, but to get them to agree to it and see what's reasonable, where we can meet in the middle. Or the plan commission board may say, there's no reason, you don't have to approve anything to put in the ordinance. If someone wants to
Right.
do, like I said, a motel or hotel, and you don't think it's appropriate for Vernon for whatever reason, we don't have to add the use. It's not a protected use in any way that has to be in the village, so. Other things might be, like a solid waste facility, for instance. We might have to figure a way to put that in if
Well, that's because
the
of
state
state
requires it.
statute, yeah. Right, that's the point of the Attorney Macy's letter was solid waste, quarried and special care facilities, like you discussed, it's
Right.
because there's state statutes
right,
governing those.
correct.
Just like there is for cell tower sightings,
Yeah.
Sometimes our state overlords will
Right.
dictate to us.
I have one other quick question on the
Yep.
floodplain ordinance on page 1, section 1, the sentence immediately following the term section 1. I see it says chapter blank, so it doesn't say what chapter we're talking about.
Right.
And then it says of the Village of Waukesha Village Code entitled Village of Vernon Floodplain. If it's titled Village of Vernon Flood Plan, why are we referencing the Village of Waukesha?
It shouldn't be.
Good
So
catch.
that's a typo.
Okay. And then what did you have in mind for the chapter? What was that about?
Well, see, the thing is that the village code of ordinances is a whole code. And so I don't know what the chapter
Oh,
number is gonna
I'm
be.
sorry.
It's
And I-
gonna, it's gonna
and I
fit in our
left it-
code somewhere.
I left it blank also because it's the ordinance that I drafted is going to legal, and I've seen it done a standalone ordinance. I've seen it in conjunction with the zoning ordinance. So I thought when and if the board does decide to adopt and send it to legal for review, Attorney Mace would be more versed into the most appropriate area of the zoning code or standalone code that ordinance should prevail.
I'm sorry, I'm not following where the Village of Waukesha text is. I just searched for it. It didn't come up.
Where do you see that, Jim?
Right. I got it circled.
Oh, that's in the, that's the ordinance, the adopting
Oh, that's
ordinance
the- that's the
language itself,
adopted
Not in the not in the actual ordinance. So, to clarify, the adopting ordinance is an ordinance that's passed by the board to adopt the floodplain ordinance. So it's it's a piece of this, but I actually have not even seen that, so I don't know what that's.
So basically, what I did is wrote the introduction, actually accidentally put Waukesha, but the ordinance that the village board adopts is not what Sean gave you. The ordinance is something that the attorney drafts for codification to be part of your code.
That's what that is, that you just referenced. That is not finalized yet.
That's the legal piece that makes it law after it's reviewed by an attorney.
Right. So if this, if this is adopted tonight recommended by the Plan Commission, adopted by the board, that ordinance language will be, you'll be approving that language subject to final revision by the planner and the attorney for content and clarity. So it's in draft format right now, and apparently that's the way it's always done in Vernon. It's drafted by the clerk.
Yeah, initially, and
Initially.
typically always reviewed by the attorney because they're actually laws of the village. And then when the ordinance is adopted, it's done in so that when it's codified, the person that's codifying the ordinance for law, for citations, or referencing, when you're referencing something in a code, that's how it's done. You look at a raw ordinance, a formulated ordinance, an ordinance that's reviewed by the attorney and then codified by our codification company that does that.
Right. So that typo will be corrected.
Yes.
It's a long answer to your, yeah, it will be corrected, but yes.
Thank you.
Well, that was helpful that you clarified the process from this point forward.
Right.
It's, we don't snap our fingers and say, well, now it's in the ordinance.
No, but you will be done with it after tonight. You're basically, it'll have to be signed, but if you give approval tonight, it won't come back to this body again.
Okay. There are other questions from the board or the plan commission? Otherwise, we'll get the general public, of which there are 6 in the audience. So we'll ask If you have comments on any of the items in the public hearing, please come up, state your name and address, and give your comments.
Yeah, something like that.
Maybe. Now, do we have that? Is that, I don't see a little green light, so,
Depends on the subject.
right. Oh, it is it? Okay. All right.
So my name is Andrea Shane. I'm here with my father, Dwayne Engel, and his real estate agent, Jack Baker. I actually talked to some of you, Sean over the phone already, and so we've had some support from this group already, which is very much appreciated. So my father has been a resident previously Big Bend and now Vernon for 40 years now. I grew up here, have been back since COVID hit in March, even driving down Central, sort of flooded with memories. But he owns and operates a greenhouse business off of Big Bend Drive, kind of backing up to the. All right, there we go.
Oh, there, well,
Backing up to the Fox River, is nearing retirement, and is starting to look into sale of the property. So I've become more familiar with zoning than I ever have been before over the course of the past few weeks here. And we've been navigating both Vernon zoning and the Waukesha Shoreline Ordinance, which is relevant to the property because, again, it backs up onto the Fox River. And so our attendance here today is really twofold. The first is to ensure that greenhouses remain an allowed use under Vernon zoning, specifically in A2 properties. And the second is so that greenhouses and accessory businesses like nurseries and small-scale landscaping is taken into consideration when Vernon is drafting its own shoreline ordinance. So I noticed in the proposed amendment of the conditional uses that there's a stricken use for agricultural businesses, including custom grain drying, creameries, food mills, commercial greenhouses, and condenseries. I think the intention there was probably to strike agricultural processing businesses more so than greenhouses, because there are a couple of other uses that are still on there, including horticultural services that include the retail sale of nursery, landscape material, and other agricultural crops and commodities, also landscaping, lawn and garden businesses, and also wholesale nurseries, greenhouses, and hatcheries. But our request really today is just if it would be possible to explicitly recite commercial greenhouses under one of those currently allowed uses, perhaps in conjunction with horticultural services, so that it's not an accidental casualty of the proposed amendment to the conditional uses.
okay, I'm gonna, do you have the numbers, or Sean, can you tell us the numbers? So, and we'll continue on with public comments, but we'll circle back
Okay.
to it, so Sean can catch up. So you're looking to make sure, just so I understand, to make sure that greenhouses are still a permitted conditional use.
That's right.
In our zoning code, we do have our floodplain ordinance tonight, but not shoreline, so shoreline's coming. So
And
we'll,
I'll keep an eye out for that.
right.
So do you want me to comment real quick on it? So currently, you're right. The blanket category for ag uses does include commercial greenhouses. There is another section that is not being stricken, that's landscaping, lawn and garden businesses, which is a permitted conditional use in A2. So landscaping business, lawn business, garden business. Certainly, if you had a mind to do so, we could extrapolate or expand that and call it landscaping, lawn, greenhouse, and garden businesses. They all kind of go together. There are conditions established for that for distances and buffers and landscape screening and other things. So I think they all kind of go hand in hand. So I wouldn't have an issue with it if you guys didn't have an issue with that change. There is, let me see what the conditions are.
I mean, you wouldn't want to see something done on 2 acres.
Um, I'll tell you in a second.
Okay, so on
So
page,
bottom of page 13.
Yeah.
Landscape, lawn and garden businesses. So the current restrictions or conditions are all buildings have to be at least 150 feet from the lot line of an adjoining lot in a residential district, or at least 50 feet from a lot line of an adjoining lot in any other district. Their use is a existing legal non-conforming conditional use, so they wouldn't have to abide by those, but any new building would have to abide by those. Has to be allowed in an arterial collector street, which is the case for them. Planting screen of at least 10 feet in height and 15 feet wide shall be provided between any abutting property line and the proposed use. You can increase or decrease that planting screen, similar to what we do for contractors' yards. That's sort of the guideline, and then we can go up or down based on the surroundings. Has to be proved that it's compatible with surroundings related to noise, traffic, dust, hours of operation, etc. Has to include the site plan has to include the type and quantity of equipment and vehicles, location, type of storage materials, location of all greenhouses, so it's mentioned in there already, shade houses and storage bins, parking areas for customers, employees, signs, toilets, fuel storage, landscaping, lighting, dumpsters, and hours of operation. It's a service, restricted to a service-oriented business and prohibited from manufacturing or assembling products. It says the sale of products on the premises which are not produced is prohibited unless expressly permitted or permitted subject to specific conditions in the permit. So you could change the permit or allow that to be sold off-site. So I'm not sure how your use operates, but you must get plants from outside, or do you grow them all in-house? Okay, so this would fit with yours, but it can be modified too if someone wanted to bring in stuff from outside. Let's say Edgewood Greenhouse, for instance, grows it and sells it here, and so that would be allowed if you specifically would allow that as part of the conditions. And so applicable storage of chemicals, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no lot size requirements, but I think that's kind of handled by the building setback. So the greenhouses that would be on site have to be set back substantially from the adjacent lot. So it's going to require a substantial lot anyways to do an operation like this, aside from existing legal non-conforming uses. So again, it's already mentioned in here about greenhouses, so I don't see why we wouldn't include the term greenhouses in the title.
Sean, where I start with this is, it's a good example of why we struck ag businesses, because over on page 6, number 2, ag
There's
business.
nothing there.
Yeah, there's nothing there. And it includes commercial greenhouses, not just all greenhouses, but
That's
commercial, as you pointed out, commercial greenhouses, and there's nothing there except 5 acres in the 50 feet,
That's right. So that's all they have.
right? So there was 5 acres there, and you're saying, and I guess it's new number 9, page 13. If we add it in there, there is no acreage, and you're saying that,
I'm saying it's 50 feet from any lot line or 150 feet from a residential lot line. So there's built-in sizing as part of that. We could include a minimum. I don't know what the best minimum is. We could say 5 acres, but I don't know if it's necessary given the setbacks that are required from those buildings.
well, we don't need to decide this right at this moment in this
Not at
meeting,
this
but-
moment.
Well, thank you
before
for bringing
before
that
the
to our
public hearing
attention, though.
closes, I think you have to make a decision.
Right. Okay, anything further? Okay, I think we understand your point, right?
I apologize.
Okay.
Do you mind if I get your name and address?
Sure. My name is Andrea Shane, SCHOEN. And my current address, should I give the address of the property, or?
You know your address.
My current residential address, 17075 Sanctuary Trail, Brookfield, Wisconsin, 53005.
Thank you.
And your father's name and,
Is Wayne, E-W-A-Y-N-E, Engel, E-N-G-E-L.
And Mr. Engel's address?
Oh, wait, this is a test. Although I feel like I'm going to get under Vernon anymore. Big Ben. Wisconsin. 53103.
Yep.
Right.
All right.
See you pass.
Right. So you are in Vernon, but the post office is Big Bend, of course. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Public comments, further public comments. We have three gentlemen, not for this, not for this, not for this. Yes, sir. Please come up and state your name and address for the record so that we can get your comments, in the record.
Jack Baker, Caldwell Banker, Lake Geneva. 226 Rod Street, Lake Geneva. I would just ask you to look at the fact that if you're asking for 150 feet setback from a side line, if you think about that, 150 feet from the left, 150 feet from the right is 300. You're asking for an awful lot of frontage and you still can't even build a building. So I would think that those should be considered to be a little less. If you look around at most properties around the state, those are exorbitant setbacks for side setbacks. Even if you're out in the farm communities, it's 50 feet. If you have animals, it's 20 feet. If you don't have animals on the sidelines, it's 100 feet in the back, on the back line if you have animals, and 50 feet if you don't. So I think that if you use the kinds of numbers you're using in terms of setbacks, you're really almost counting out every possibility of somebody to utilize their property.
Okay, I got it down here, okay. Setbacks, but remember, these setbacks are from residential districts.
Right. So the comment I'd like to make is that it's 50 unless you're next to a residential district. So this is basically a commercial use that's allowed in some residential and some ag districts. So that's why there's extra precautions taken for setbacks. If you're next to a commercial operation and you want to do one of these, you only have to abide by the 50-foot setback. So that's the difference.
How would this be different from a gas station that's next to a house?
But you can't do a gas station in a residential or an ag district.
If there are gas stations next to residential.
Right. So if we determined a piece of property is a good spot for commercial use, everyone's on notice that that property is zoned commercial, right? We're still going to make them do buffers and so on next to the residential property, but we're not going to make them do a 50 or 100-foot setback because it's a commercial property. It's zoned for commercial. These types of operations are allowed on residential or ag properties, and so we're going to ensure that there's some extra setback there because you're allowed to do it in the middle of a ag district or a residential district, where a commercial property it's known. It's a commercial property. If you have a house on a commercial property, you're going to get buffering, but you're not going to be afforded the same buffers as you would in the middle of a residential district.
I don't see the difference between that and a gas station being next to a house.
Grandfather.
Yeah, that gas station may be zoned commercial.
That's the difference.
The house is residential,
Right.
but maybe it's zoned A2. Maybe it's zoned A1.
The house,
No, the parcel which you're utilizing as a conditional use.
for a greenhouse, you mean? I don't,
Just an example, yeah.
sure. And again, my point is that if a property is zoned commercial, that means it's in a location in the village where we know that there's going to be commercial use there. We're still going to make them do screening and buffering from adjacent residential use. Do that, but I think you know, a commercial operation in the middle of a residential district needs more protections than a property in a commercial district.
If it's allowed at all.
If it's allowed at all, right.
We struck out the gas stations already out of here. You can't do it. I mean, we could, you know. Right. And we're not trying to look like Lake Geneva or some other city that has done, you know, a poor job at zoning and allows gas station next inside residential subdivisions or houses around it, so.
Right. So again, just to recap, the big buffers are in there, the 150-foot buffer is in there because it's allowed in certain ag and residential districts.
Right. It's the residential district that needs protection
Right.
from business.
And I get your
commercials.
point. A commercial operation next to a residence.
The neighbor next door, for all the time he's lived there, 40 years, her driveway access is across his property.
Mhm.
If his property was not, he leaves there, and the next person would like to allow him to do that, but doesn't have that in a conditional use, that's detrimental to her as utilizing her property like she's used it over all the years. And she's well notified that she doesn't own the land, so adverse possession doesn't fall in her situation. But still, in the meantime, he's allowing her to access her garage across his lot.
Sure, but the situation we're talking about, this particular property, all the buildings are too close to any property line given any of our ordinances in offsets. So some of them are nearly on top of property lines. They're very, very close. And so they wouldn't necessarily even meet our commercial district. So this particular isn't ever going to meet any of these conditions. So it's grandfathered in. It's a legal non-conforming use. And so any new building, though, that would be on the property, it would need to comply with whatever's in the code.
So somebody could get a conditional use like he has to continue the operation in the buildings that are currently there?
Yes,
And under the stipulations that you just indicated in the
for anything new, yes, and for any new use, right.
Other comments, questions, concerns from the public? From the board or the plan commission?
Or are we
Well,
gonna
Before
discuss?
before we close the public hearing.
We'll be discussing these later, all right?
Right, it's on the agenda to discuss later when if we have a motion to adopt the ordinance as modified, so we can make modifications tonight as necessary, or if necessary. That's why, Sean, I wanted to go through the legal review to make sure all of those are in. Yeah, in the hearing comments, right. Okay, should I go around the room, or are we good? 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 Everybody shaking their head yes. So we will close the public hearing. Public hearing is now closed, so now we will go to item 6 on the agenda. Discussion and possible action, the final certified survey map for Mr. Klum for the properties located at S69W22965 National Avenue and W228S7055 Enterprise Drive, Vernon. So Sean, why don't you kick us off?
Are we on 6? Look out.
Oh, I did it. I'm sorry, I read the wrong one. Excuse me, sorry about that. Final certified survey map by Lucko Lentz, tax key BNT 2056996. Apologize for that, I didn't mean to skip.
All right.
So, sorry about that. So Sean, could you kick us off?
Sure.
on that?
Give me 1 second to switch gears. Okay, so the Plan Commission and, the Plan Commission back in March. Whoa.
Or a circuit breaker.
So this property is at the end of Vernon Hills Drive. There's two parcels, total is 11.84 acres, zoned A5, which requires at least 5 acres for a lot. Back in March, the Plan Commission reviewed a conceptual certified survey map to combine both of the parcels into a single lot. The petitioner also received approval from the Plan Commission at the time due to the fact that there's isolated natural resource area on the property, sort of the top half of the property. They received approval for building envelope disturbance area to be able to construct a home within the isolated natural resource area. Basically, the home is going to sit right where the east-west dividing lot line is going to go. Is going to poke out from the natural resource area to the south and kind of survey the rest of the property from there. That's the reason for the lot combination, because there's two lots. You can't put a house in the middle of the lot lines, even though both lots share one tax key number. Essentially, it's two lots, and so they have to be combined in order to put the house in its location. So, as I mentioned, they did receive approval for that building envelope disturbance area back in March from the Plan Commission. At the time, they presented a tree survey, let us know what trees were out there, which trees were worth saving, and we found that there wasn't a great deal of trees were saved in that specific area. There were some damaged and diseased trees as well. And what that allows them to do is put their sanitary system, their yard, their house, all within that area. Any other areas in the isolated natural resource area besides the existing driveway that serves the property can't be disturbed. So basically, they're able to remove invasive species from the rest of the isolated natural resource area and that kind of thing, but any grading, filling, et cetera, needs approval from the village of Vernon to do anything beyond that in the isolated natural resource area itself. One comment that the attorney wanted me to make to clarify, we've had a couple of temporary cul-de-sacs come before us in the past few months, and Vernon Hills Drive is a temporary cul-de-sac that ends at the property line. And the idea was at some point when this property got developed, that temporary cul-de-sac would be extended on the property and become a permanent cul-de-sac at some point. We've heard a couple petitions similar to these to create new lots at the end of temporary cul-de-sacs, whereby we've said the policy has been in the past, if a new lot's created, essentially you have to get a extension of that temporary cul-de-sac to a permanent cul-de-sac. The difference here is that there's already two existing lots. The petitioner is creating a new lot, but isn't creating any additional lots. In fact, he's reducing the number of lots. And in fact, they'd be able to build a house on the property now without any approval. It would never have to come to the Plan Commission, for instance, for the CSM. They could come, get a zoning permit and a building permit, build a lot. It would never trigger anything with respect to the extension of that cul-de-sac. So even though they're creating a lot, they're not creating new lots in this case. So they'd be allowed to build a home without extension of the temporary cul-de-sac at this time. I would ask that the petitioner, it's not on the CSM now, but to add a note to the certified survey map that would basically say the CSM, that Vernon Hills Drive temporary cul-de-sac would be extended upon any further division of the property. So if proposed lot one is ever further divided at that time, and I know the petitioner isn't intending to do that, but at the time, if it was divided again, that the cul-de-sac would need to be extended and become a permanent cul-de-sac. Our surveyor's taken a look at the survey. It's in good shape, only has a couple of recommendations, very minor. We can provide those to the petitioner, and so those would need to be satisfied along with that note that I mentioned prior to signature and recording by the village of Vernon. So I don't have any other comments on this one.
Sean, I think you said this, but what, did anything change from the conceptual that we gave them preliminary?
The land disturbance area building envelope?
Right.
Yeah, so it actually is different, but not substantively different. Before, there was a boundary, on the conceptual certified survey map, there was I think it was a 110-foot by 150-foot box that was drawn. However, the box moved to the south outside of the actual isolated natural resource area. All they need to do is define the area within the isolated natural resource area. And so the shape of the box has changed, the dimensions have changed, but it's in the same location generally. It just doesn't extend beyond the isolated natural resource area anymore.
Oh, okay.
So it looks different, but it's in the same spot.
And it's roughly the same size?
No, it's smaller now because it
Smaller.
doesn't extend past, they don't have to define that envelope past the isolated natural resource area. We're in the conceptual phase. The box went outside of the natural resource area. They don't have to do that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? We only care about the box inside the isolated natural resource area.
Right, that's the only box.
That's only that's being excluded.
Right. Questions for Sean? Plan Commission?
Sean, is there going to be enough land left after this merging of these two lots for further land development?
It could, yeah. It's zoned A5, which is a 5-acre lot size, so you could get another lot in there if you wanted to potentially. But I don't think that's the intent.
Okay.
And it could be rezoned as well at some point, according to the land use plan. The problem is that half the property is isolated natural resource area anyhow, and so we wouldn't want to promote further land division of that area within the wooded portion anyhow.
Are you Mr. Luckow? You can come forward and state your name and address for the record, and you raise your hand. I can't hardly recognize everybody.
Right, with the mask.
The mask.
R.G. Lugo, and it's 6057 Churchwood Circle, Greenville. Anyway, you were saying, nothing's really changed.
You're not thinking of further land divisions down the road, but if there ever was another further land division, at that time the cul-de-sac would need to be extended from Vernon Hills Drive to make it a permanent cul-de-sac. Do you understand that?
I'm not quite sure how would it be extended unless it goes onto that property.
Yes, if you further divided your land, you're creating lot 1 now. If 10 years down the road you decide you want to split one more lot off of your property, at that point in time, you'd have to bring the permanent cul-de-sac onto your property and extend it. So that would be a requirement. We're going to require that to be noted on the certified survey map. Yeah, there's a couple of surveyor comments, just a couple of the typos on the survey itself that have to be cleaned up, and we'll give you those comments. You can give them to your surveyor, and they're very minor.
Just for clarification, you're talking about this section there, right?
Well, those two are not.
Yeah, they are now. And this is the one you're gonna build on?
No.
No, the other.
Right in the middle,
In the middle, okay.
In the middle.
smack dab in the middle.
Okay, good.
Other questions to Sean or the petitioner who's here? Board members, Plan Commission members?
Do we have to come up with some type of a statement to satisfy Attorney Macy's concern?
He wanted it to be in the record. He wanted the rationale for the approval of this CSM to be in the record. It doesn't have to be noted in my staff report, but just as part of the record of why we'd allow this.
So the rationale that we determined was that he's not developing the property at this point. He's turning two lots into one,
Right.
in fact.
He's always had the right to build one home. There's not an
Right.
existing home on
Right.
the property. So,
And with I don't know if he was aware of your requirement for the statement on the survey or one of the conditions on the temporary cul-de-sac.
it's in my staff report. I don't know if he's got my staff report, but we'll get it to the petitioner.
Right. Sean, on your staff recommendation, point number 2, petitioner shall add a note to the CSM stating that Vernon Hills Drive temporary cul-de-sac shall be extended upon further land division
Correct.
of Lot 1. I think that's right, Dan. The reason why he combined 2 lots into one. He could build one house. Our ordinance require is extensions of these temporary cul-de-sacs, and we have them all over the place, and they're always seemingly a problem. And our ordinance say, well, if there's gonna be land divisions, you gotta extend the cul-de-sac.
Right. He's already got a legal lot of record. He can already build a house.
Right,
So-
right.
So is that enough for the record?
I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
I had a question, Carl. All these temporary cul-de-sacs, they're blacktop, aren't they?
They look just like a,
Yeah.
Some are bigger than others, but they're almost all of them are blacktop, not to a full circle, but.
Right. Yeah, that's for future staff meeting, Sean. We gotta figure out what to do with these things.
well,
Not the existing ones, we're stuck with them, but I mean, let's try not to create new ones,
new subdivisions, we're gonna be very careful with
how they're set up,
how they're set up, yeah.
right? Other questions? Otherwise, our actions item is, as Sean would say, report would say is, if we're inclined to approve, the Vernon Plan Commission would recommend to the board approval with the 3 conditions
Correct.
and surveyor comments. Well, that's probably a condition too, right?
That is condition 1.
That's conditional 1, right?
Yeah, the surveyor comments are on the bottom of page 2. And so if you just look at and then the last page, the conditions also mention that note about no further land division without extension of the cul-de-sac.
Right, and this is your report dated December 3, 2020.
Right. So give that to your surveyor.
So we are looking for a motion by the Vernon Plan Commission to recommend to the Village of Vernon Board approval of the certified survey map request by Richard Luckow and Elizabeth Flynn with the legal description subject to the conditions stated in the December 3rd, 2020 full report.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Good motion, Sean?
And it's fine,
Sorry, yeah, final certified survey map. Any further discussion? This is Plan Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Plan Commission. Now, next on the agenda is Village Board action, so this will be Village Board action. So we're looking for a similar motion to, how do we usually say that? Concur with the recommendation and approve.
I'll make a motion to concur with the Planning Commission's recommendation to the town village board.
And approve this final certified survey map as
And
set forth in the Plan Commission with the conditions. Is
I'll
there-
second.
Is that good enough? You know, yeah, we can get a motion together on that. Okay, any discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Yeah, where's Mr. Clum? Yeah, hang on.
you gotta take a couple minutes?
Oh.
Therapy to go through, or? I just ended that
Oh, yeah.
Tuesday. Oh, okay.
I might be able to
You're on
get
your
the
own,
other guys from the planning commission.
Well,
yeah.
her name is Amy Helminski, and she says, do it the Amy way, not the Army way.
Yeah.
don't know, we could potentially take action on these if the plan commission board wanted to without petitioner involvement if you have any questions. Right, if we can answer all the questions without the applicant here, we could take action. We could
Yeah.
introduce them and see where it goes.
Yeah. This is on the sign?
They're fairly straightforward. I know the sign is very straightforward.
Right,
The CSM is fairly straightforward. They've seen it in concept already, so we could move along. If there's no questions for the petitioner, take action. If there is, then table it. So who are the two?
Thank you.
I know Jeff Matrox, his architect, asked me earlier if this is on the agenda, and I said yes. And obviously the sign people knew it was on the agenda. I did, and I talked to, yeah, I talked to Matrox, who's Clum's architect, I talked to him, told him when it was. Yeah, but like I said, we might be able to get you it, if the plan commission is okay with that. Everything exploded. Sounded like it exploded.
What did you say about the paper industry going down the tubes?
Yeah, not here. So is everybody getting a laptop, or just the board, or is the plan commission on board?
Yeah, I got one. Yeah, I've got one.
So is it gonna go paperless at some point, or no?
Probably not.
You gotta read paper? I think plan sets in front of me,
Things are too small.
Yeah, it's hard to flip quickly between a couple of two things.
Well, I like to have something to write on.
Put something to write on, you got
Yeah.
this here, you're looking at three.
I like
things.
Right, right.
It's hard.
Yeah, there'll always be paper. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, saw your hair one messy in back. I wouldn't show my face, because I told you I didn't shower yet. Exactly. Yeah, the only problem, virtual meetings between the plan commission and board are okay, it's the public that it's tough to get that. You obviously advertise that they can join, but it's, it's not as seamless. If you have to, you have to. See where things go in the next couple of months, I guess.
Gives you the freedom to do both. Because if you have certain sessions, you're not gonna have anybody here.
Yeah.
The virtual works out well. Yeah,
Some people can participate from home.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, right, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if I'm stuck up north, yeah.
Yep. You now have the versatility. Yep.
Right from your bed,
Yes, see,
right from the hospital.
put the foot up and.
that's where it's going. A lot of realization of that with this COVID thing now, so.
Let's go back. Recess is over. It's 8:15. We'll talk, the next item up, and I jumped the gun, so we'll go back to number 7. And number 8, is part of number 7 or same petitioner in 8. So 7 is the final certified survey map for Mr. Klum. He is not presently here, so Sean, why don't you kick us off? And we'll stay on the final certified survey map, but the next item is his sign request. So if we want to try to do those together, or maybe we just do one at a time.
Let's just do them one at a time.
Let's do them one at a time. Okay.
So you've seen the conceptual certified survey map for this request previously as part of the rezoning request, as part of the site plan of operation and conditional use request for the contractor's yard. Essentially, they're taking a portion of the existing 5.65 acre parcel that has a home on it that currently fronts National Avenue, taking a chunk of that and adding it to the lot that's on Enterprise Drive for a total of about 6 acres that would be fronting Enterprise Drive for the contractor's yard. As I mentioned, they've already received approval for their rezoning, their site plan, their conditional use. This is the last step of the process to get the certified survey map done so they can move forward. The new lot 1 that would be for the existing home, it's going to be about 1 acre. That meets the requirements for R1 zoning. New lot 2 is the contractor's yard lot. It meets the requirements for B3 zoning. As you saw as part of the process, they're also exchanging some land with the property to the south in order to meet the setback requirements for the contractor's building. They had to be 50 foot from any adjacent property line, and so they're exchanging some property with the guy to the south. Exchange of land is about 2,035 square feet, with a net gain of about 1,035 square feet for the property south. One of the comments Attorney Macy had, and you've seen that exchange of land has been presented as part of the conceptual certified survey map. So you saw what's being proposed to change here. Attorney Macy has said that prior to actually recording the exchange of land, that the village planner should review it just to make sure that when the 2 lots or the 2 areas of land get exchanged, that it doesn't accidentally create separate lots. There's specific language that has to be added to the exchange of land to make sure new tax keys don't get assigned to that property. And so I'll be doing that. I'll add this. It's not in my conditions now, but I've added it here, and so I'll read that in. Condition 2 would be updated to add another sentence to it that basically says the deeds for exchange are to be approved by the village planner so as not to create separate lots. So it's fairly straightforward. We just want to make sure there's not tiny remnant parcels being created through that exchange.
So Sean, it still is the 3 conditions?
It's still the 3 conditions. Condition 2 just gets that extra sentence added to the end. Our surveyor had a few comments, couple things, one per state statute requirements, just related to the cord line. Also per our village ordinance requirements, the first floor elevation, the existing wells, the septic system, covers and the drainage ditches have to be shown on the CSM, and so those have to be added. And then just a few recommendations, very minor things. So nothing large or major that's jumped out here, but just things that have to be included as part of the CSM before it gets signed and recorded. So I have nothing else to add. We've seen this conceptually already. I just have those 3 conditions.
Any significant changes from what we had before with the conceptual?
There aren't any changes. It's
Not any changes, right? That's what I thought.
Except more detail because it's the final certified survey map.
Okay, so you're going to add to condition number 2, the deeds for exchange, what shall be reviewed and approved by planner
That sounds good.
prior to recording?
Shall be reviewed and approved by the village planner. Well, that doesn't get signed by anybody. That gets just recorded. But I can't
They have
stop
to
anybody
sign the
from signing
deeds.
it. The village will have to sign the deed?
No.
No.
No, the property owners sign
The
it.
property owners, but I can't stop them from signing it. I can just say, you're not gonna record it.
You're not gonna record it, right? Right, which means they'll just redo it and re-sign it, right?
And I can tell you too, the county would pick up on this.
Throws it back to us and
Yeah.
says, did you approve this?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay, so that's reviewed and approved. Yeah, I want approval in there, Sean, just so you can make sure that they don't do what Attorney Macy is afraid of them doing.
Right, so I'll just read it. The deeds for exchange shall be reviewed and approved by the village planner prior to recording to prevent the creation of separate lots.
Okay, separate lots or separate tax, well, I guess it's separate lots, separate tax deed. Key, okay, separate, so prevent the, right, creation of separate lots, right, okay, that's good. And I think that would address Attorney Macy's comment. So, let's see. Petitioner isn't here, but there's no reason why we can't move ahead and act, I assume.
That,
Unless you had questions for
Unless you
him.
had questions for him and didn't
yeah,
wanna
that usually
approve it.
concerns me
If you
when.
need more information, then we should table it, but
Yeah, that we deal with important subjects like this.
It's
and the
unusual.
petitioner
It
has
is unusual.
No reason to be absent, really.
I'm not sure why he's not here.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I know they were intending on coming, I'm just concerned. Because Mr. Klum is not a
no. he's not.
fly-by-night developer.
Yeah.
Should this be tabled then to the next meeting,
No.
if that's the concern?
I mean, the biggest thing is, do you have questions?
Yeah, if we have
I-
questions for him for certain, I don't, Dan, you're shaking your head. You
No, I
have any
don't.
que- I don't particularly have any questions, but, and also for the sign as well, I'm more worried about the sign in the sense that, okay, they presented it, well, what if they changed it? Now we're approving something that they had no, that what they wanted to make a modification to. that we don't
Well,
know.
their application is current. That's showing what they are requesting to build for the sign. So if they want to change it,
We
they'd have
could
to come
approve it
back.
if they said, no, we got a different idea.
they'd have to
Then
come
they
back.
You gotta come back in.
Yeah, then they have to reapply.
So there's no harm in
It's gonna
improving.
cost them more money.
Yeah, yeah.
But I understand your concern. for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, usually the petitioner is generally here. Other than that, I don't have any problem. I have no questions for him.
Yeah, I don't either. Everybody's. Right, that's what I mean. We could table it, that'd slow him up a month. I don't know if that's important to him or not, but if we don't,
I'm sure it is. I'm sure
if we
time
don't
is of the
need
essence.
to. And if there is a change, or if he wants to change, then we'll just.
He's
rescind
gonna
what
have
we
to
did
come back.
before and make him start over.
Yeah, so the danger here for certified survey map approval, if he wants changes, it's not a big deal. There's no public hearings involved. Just has to come back and we modify our approval.
Right.
Mhm.
It's different than a rezoning or conditional use or something along those lines.
If he doesn't agree to these, then he's
Then
gonna
he
have
comes
to talk
back
to
and get them
Sean.
changed, yeah.
Yeah.
Has to get him changed.
Hearing that, I'll make a motion that for the planning commission
To recommend,
to recommend approval.
recommend to the Village of Vernon Board approval of the certified survey map with the conditions stated in the full, as modified tonight,
That,
stated in the December 3, 2020 report, as modified tonight.
I'll
Okay.
second the motion.
I'll have second. Any further discussion from the Plan Commission? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Village Board? I'll make a motion to concur and approve, concur with the Vernon Plan Commission and approve the certified survey map with the conditions as modified in tonight's meeting by both our report date, December 3, 2020.
I'll second that motion.
Any,
With
Discussion.
the understanding that Sean incorporates that sentence that he indicated.
He said that
Okay.
as
Oh,
modified.
okay.
yep, as modified, thank you for clarification. Any further discussion? All in favor, board?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now the sign request, and he came in and it was too big and he made it smaller, but you can take us through that too, Sean, please.
Yeah, so this is a sign for the same business, for the contractor's yard, for Five Star Energy Services. Their original submittal was for a larger sign. I haven't had a lot of experience dealing with the sign code. We just don't approve that many signs. Since I've been here, I don't think I've seen one except the electronic message center sign for Big Bend Elementary. I think that's the only one that I've actually seen in the village in 3 years. So I wasn't as familiar with the code, and so they submitted the application. It was for a sign that was 27 square feet. I said, fine, look good. Attorney Macy saw it and said, oh, are you sure this complies with the ordinance? Turns out it didn't. The way the code is written for signs in the commercial districts or the industrial districts, it's limited to 32 square feet, but you can't have any more than 16 square feet per building face that's visible from a public road. So they could do two 16 square foot signs. They don't want to. The only sign being proposed is on the east elevation of the building that faces Enterprise Drive. And so they modified their sign application, and that's why you had two reports that you saw. This new one is only a 14.84 square foot sign cabinet, will not be illuminated. So it's about half the square footage of the previous one. And the original sign that was presented, I thought was a better sign. It was individual logo and letters that were pin mounted to the building instead of just a cabinet sign with a plastic face on it. But apparently they said it's, once you get to this small of a size, it's not possible to do the individual letters and logos, just not effective. And so they're abiding by the sign requirements, but again, in my opinion, it's not as nice of a sign as it was first approved. And so I mentioned to the applicant, made a note of, basically said, hey, your sign code's very restrictive. I made the same comment to the attorney, to the president and the clerk. They said, yeah, this is probably one of the more restrictive sign codes I've ever seen in terms of what's allowed for square footage. Obviously you wanted to keep, whoever developed the code and when this was put in place wanted to keep signage modest. Didn't want giant signs on commercial buildings, but certainly 32 square feet for an entire property, that's 4 by 8 for an entire property, or only 16 square feet for any particular face of a building, that's pretty small for signage. And so just something to put on the back burner for another time. Whenever we take a look at the signage or look at the zoning ordinance again, we can maybe revisit the sign provisions, because I do think it's pretty limiting.
Right, particularly in a business park.
Right.
I got a question, Carl. Does anybody know who originally established those ordinances on the signs?
Well,
Sean, Dan, and Vince, and Jamie Robarczyk, we worked on that.
What was the thinking about that limitation?
Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, when we were drafting that, we did look at some other ordinances that were much more restrictive. We did find some that were, we found a few that were more restrictive, we found a lot that were, but then we looked at some, municipalities that had a much broader signage, and it didn't look very attractive. I mean,
Your memory's better than mine.
I agree. The limit, you should definitely limit the size of signage in business districts, but I don't know, 16 square feet may be too little. I think the idea, if you're limiting it to that small, all you're going to get are cabinet signs. And again,
This area is the same one that's off of National, correct?
Enterprise Drive down.
There's no residential, it's all industrial.
Right, and
Now,
business,
when you
yeah.
pull into there's signs that are far larger than that, right off of National.
Right, could have existed before this was adopted in.
Okay.
Or it could be in Big Bend.
no,
They're
no,
not-
they
not-
were.
not
Well, there's one
Order is
property
national.
down there.
Right, one
was
property.
when we were in.
How
in
does the
county.
ordinance read again, Sean? Is it,
I've got it right here.
It says, so it's the limit on a lot is 32 square feet. The total sign area allowed per building or building storefront / tenant is 16 square feet per building facade. So 32 for the whole property, 16 for any one elevation facade. So the 32 square feet is, I don't know what the answer is today, so, and we don't have to get into it today, but something to think about going forward. And we don't have a ton of commercial properties in Vernon anyway, so it's not a huge deal. Like I said, I've only seen one sign application in 3 years.
Where do you get the 16 feet here then?
Yeah, Sean, I just flipped open 300-13 D, permitted signs by zoning district, so. What zoning
I'm looking at my staff report, I don't have the,
Is this the correct copy I'm looking at? Industrial districts,
You got
32
another
square
page
feet?
there.
but we're not, we're zone B3.
For zone B3?
Yeah.
But isn't that a business district, B3 shall be 32 square feet?
Yeah, but then it goes on to say,
Oh, okay, I got what you said, fine, that's.
so that, I
totally-
missed that the first
yeah,
time around
yep,
too, and that's
okay.
when Attorney Macy caught it.
I got it, yep. Total versus
Yeah.
for the lot is 32, total for a building facade
Yes.
is 16. Gotcha, yeah. Yeah, I don't mind, well, big sign.
So I don't know
That's,
if that was the intent or not, but that's
Yeah.
what it says.
Right,
the way that's written is, it's more like for
Multi-tenants,
multi-tenant divisions there, that each one could only be
Oh.
16 square feet. But
Right.
if you only have,
a
you only have one tenant in there,
If you drive down that road, Enterprise, most of those businesses, you gotta go in and find out, who are you, so I know where I'm going, because nobody has signs.
right. Most of them don't need it because they're not a retail operation or service operation where people have to know where
True,
they're
yeah.
at.
They're more commercial, yeah.
But it does, I mean, it does say total sign area allowed per building or
yeah.
building storefront / tenant is 16 square feet per facade. So I think our hands are tied this time around. But
If this is the only sign that they're proposing for that building, I don't see why it couldn't be 32 square feet.
it says per building
Total sign area allowed per building.
or, yeah, per building. Per building, so basically per building per facade.
And I think well,
So
but
per building per facade. So they could
I
do
think that
32 square feet,
the
but.
second part of that building or storefront or tenant is like if you have tenant spaces
Oh, I
in
know.
that
Yeah,
building.
I
But
get that.
If you don't have any other tenants, you should be allowed to have 32 square.
They can do 32, but only 16 per any facade. So if they wanted to put one on the south facade to be seen by
Well, again, I think that's
I-43.
referring to each tenant.
And that's not how the attorney read it, Dan?
right.
Because that, Sean did approve it at 32, but when Attorney Macy read the ordinance to him, Sean corrected his planning comments.
Right, but I think he's right. I think it's written a little confusing, but I think
Yeah.
technically it's you gotta abide by it. So, like I said, I'll make a note of it. We'll next
We'll
time
have
we
to redo that.
I was gonna say, yeah, maybe we should address this.
next time we crack open the zoning ordinance for another reason.
yeah, let's
we
keep
can-
it on our list when
Right.
we look at our zoning ordinance.
So anyways, what they're proposing complies with the ordinance. I have a couple conditions here. One, it's complies with section 300-13, constructed as presented. They have to get the appropriate permits from us and then reimbursement of expenses, and that's it.
On your report, you say Village of Waukesha, Sean, it's Village of.
Ugh. Every time.
He wrote it, so it's more, isn't it? The Bach, if he writes
That
it.
happens all the time. You work in several places, and so it's like,
Yeah.
There's 4 conditions, and it, is modified and with a typo, let's say. Well,
typo.
typo.
the Village of Waukesha. He's right.
Well, you can print it off and put it in.
No, I'll
Maybe
make
it's-
the modification for sure.
So we're looking, well, first of all, the petitioner's not here, so I should first ask, should we table or take action? If anybody needs further information from petitioner or the sign designer, we could table. So does anybody need any further information? No? Dan, no? No, 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 no. So, with that in mind, then we can take action if we so choose. So we're looking for a plan commission, or motion by the plan commission to recommend to the Village of Vernon Board approval of the sign request
I so move.
as stated with the 4 conditions, with the typo corrected. Is the 4 conditions in the full December 7th, 2020 report. Second by Mr. Swanee. Plan Commission discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Village Board. To concur with the recommendation and approve the sign.
Make a motion to concur with the planning commission.
Second.
And we'll have the fill in the
Blanks.
fill in the motion, Karen. Yes, I will. With the conditions
With the condition.
as
Do we
modified.
have to recommend those? I could have done that, but I thought if we go on recommendation. Yeah, that's
Right,
what I
right.
I didn't,
Yeah, that's fine. That's,
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure the motion in the minutes.
or, I'm sorry, okay.
It was just more of a question.
No problem.
Got it? Got it. Okay, we've got a second. Who seconded? Trustee Swanee. Discussion by the board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We are now on number 9. Okay, now on the agenda, we take the items in the public hearing, which is the conditional uses 300-2022, land division control, which is 200-9, and development, residential development card 200-27 is the second piece of it, and the third piece is the floodplain ordinance. We take them one at a time. So we will start with conditional uses, which is section 300-22, Article 5. We had a public hearing. We had public comment. We had public comments, not one, but several public comments regarding greenhouses in particular in our proposed ordinance for public hearing. Those public comments had to do with striking, where was it, page 6, under the permitted conditional uses, number 2, ag business, which would include commercial greenhouses, but we did allow on page 13, which is new number 9, landscaping, lawn, and garden businesses, and we had a public discussion, including by the board and the plan commission and Sean, to add greenhouses to the existing language. So I think we should finish our discussion that, whether it's in or whether we would like to incorporate greenhouses in the language, as Sean suggested that we might do, or leave them out and address it some other way going forward. So,
I'd like to make that recommendation because then it clears up all the gray area. Okay, because as you read garden businesses, lawn, landscaping, greenhouses is listed further down, okay, but in this particular category, it makes it very simple to follow.
Sean, is there a distinction between, I mean, in sub 2 that we struck, I concur that we should strike it, and does everybody concur that that should stay struck, which is the ag uses, because there are no standards basically other than 5 acres. It talks about commercial greenhouses. I don't, in my mind, what is the difference? Why is the word commercial in there? Isn't a greenhouse always going to be commercial? In other words, unless it's your home use little, 20 by 20 in your backyard garden or something.
I think the differentiation was basically the way it's described in the landscaping, lawn, and garden businesses. It has the provision that says you can't sell anything that you don't produce on the property unless it's approved by the Plan Commission Board. A commercial greenhouse by itself, like Stein's Gardens and Gifts, for instance, they don't grow all their own stuff.
They're a retail store.
They're a retail store. They get if somebody else grows it for them and they sell it there. And so That's kind of the distinction, I think.
And they gotta be licensed anyways.
Well, they were concerned about their commercial greenhouse there, right? Is that-
He said they basically grow everything they sell. So they would fit under the definition under,
They don't sell anything there, and that's what we struck from the ordinance. Right?
they sell. It's a flower shop and a greenhouse.
What's the name of their business? Is this?
Fox River.
Fox River Greenhouse? Yeah, they grow, you're right, across the street from Henneberry Avenue and the bar there, right?
Oh, okay.
So they'd be allowed. to
Yeah,
sell.
they grow and sell there. They also buy from other greenhouses and
Yeah,
sell.
yeah.
They do that.
So he
So-
said, he made it sound like they didn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
But
But they
the,
do.
the provision in here says landscaping and lawn and garden businesses is restricted to a service-oriented business and prohibited from manufacturing or assembling products, which is fine. Sale of products which are not produced on the property is prohibited unless expressly permitted or permitted subject to specific conditions in the permit. Okay, so
So we could allow it.
we could allow it if someone came forward with another one of these
Yeah,
businesses. We could
yeah.
allow it on a limited basis, or say 25% of your inventory can come from, or whatever it is.
And with that clause we put in there, they're protected anyway, because they have an existing conditional.
They're
use, right?
protected one or
So-
the other.
Right.
But if they
So I don't-
sell, if
he
sell it to
sells it.
somebody else, they're supposed to get a new conditional use permit.
Yeah,
He's trying to sell it,
Yeah, and I think I get 2 calls a week,
really, really,
but it's not for the use that's,
right.
Right, they don't want to use it as a greenhouse.
it's contractor yards, it's.
Somebody wanted to do a greenhouse and a lawn care business on the property and approached us. The problem is, it would be allowed under our code. Problem is, it's county shoreline zoning A2. That's not a permitted use or conditional use in their A2 zoning. It isn't ours. It isn't in theirs. So until we establish our own shoreline zoning and basically use our version of A2 there, which is what we're gonna do, at some point, it's gonna be a permitted conditional use, but it's not currently. So it's only a grandfathered conditional use right now.
And the county doesn't allow it because it's too close to water, they're worried about runoff.
Well, it's just not, in the A2 district, you just can't do a greenhouse or a lawn and garden business in their code.
but if the new owner wants to accept all the existing conditions, they could continue.
They get, or sell it, but the new buyer would have to come in and get a new permit for it.
Right, well, basically all we're doing is changing the name on it, right? Is that-
Right, because they're not gonna be able to meet half these conditions. But we
Right,
might,
right.
we might implement some of these conditions, like the restriction on selling only what you produce on the property.
Sean, don't they have to come in for a new permit?
They do.
Right.
Right, a new permit.
Change of
So we're not just gonna rubber stamp it.
No, we'll impose certain conditions, but we can't impose all these conditions because it's a pre-existing business. They can't meet
Right,
the
right,
setbacks.
right.
They can't meet the
But
setbacks.
don't we have to use the conditions that were in existence when that conditional use was first established?
There
or is
almost
that-
were no conditions except for the use. But the existing conditional use permit just said, hey, it's a greenhouse, it's a floral, it's an existing home and some accessory buildings. There's almost nothing in there about setbacks or what they can
Yeah,
sell.
yeah.
So now that we're reading this, and if we add greenhouses to the title, landscaping, greenhouses, lawn and garden businesses, I would say then in number, if we go that route, letter F then, where it says landscaping and lawn and garden businesses, we should also add greenhouses there as well,
Oh, right.
just where it's repeated.
Right.
Okay,
It's on page 14, letter F.
I
Just-
get
just so
worried
we're
about what
consistent.
we're doing right now, by the way, to make sure we pick up everything.
It's letter H mentions greenhouses already as.
Yeah, H surprisingly
yeah.
so. That's
Yeah.
probably a glitch in how we wrote this.
It just, maybe the title, landscape, lawn and garden businesses, just wasn't completely comprehensive. Because I think there was supposed to be a distinction between these types of businesses and then commercial greenhouses, anything goes.
So then are we gonna add greenhouses in here? Is that?
Well, that's what's, I guess, being discussed, yeah.
Right, okay, but I just wanted
Just
to
did.
kind of move it.
It's already in
Done
E,
deal.
Sean, greenhouses are already in
Yeah.
E, and H, like you pointed out.
E and H, yeah.
You would add it to F. This is where we're going. setbacks, you know, this is, as we pointed out, it's 150 feet, it's residential district, we gotta keep, to me, you know, that's gotta be in there, or,
What about adding then, where it says under F, it says, the very last sentence, it limits, where it talks about products for sale, it says, i.e. mulch, fertilizer, and decorative stone. Should we also add plants there, just to be clear, that we're not just talking about mulch, fertilizer, and stone, that it's also plant material? Or bags.
Where are you from?
well, but this is only
It's
if it's
almost always
permitted. It says i.e., shouldn't that be e.g., for example?
Yes.
So, but it's, it's prohibited unless expressly permitted.
But then it's giving examples of what it could, it might
you
be,
could maybe
and
do.
I'm saying add plants to
Plants,
that. yeah.
Sure, right, why wouldn't we put plants in there? Out of all of those, plants would be the best thing to add, you know? People complain about the fertilizer, the mulch and the decorative stone, because there's big piles of it, and it's outside. You know?
Okay.
So we'll ask the plan commission, what do we think? Well, maybe I should just go around. Start with you, Fred, because you suggested it. Add it
Yeah.
in?
Add it in.
Add it in as we're discussing?
Because with everything else, it takes out the gray matter. That's why I'm suggesting it.
Okay, Gary, do you have no problem? Jim, do you have any problem? Lorraine? Jamie?
No problem.
Dan?
No problem.
Okay. You've already hit it.
Oh, very good.
Okay.
So let's see what Macy says. Right. Has been to adopt the ordinance subject to village planner putting it into final form and legal review, so we should do that. Particularly because we're making changes here on the fly.
Okay.
But other than that, our public, this is the only
The
thing that came up.
setback issue was addressed, and whether or not we should reduce the setbacks from lot lines.
Better be careful, somebody might want to increase it.
So, I mean, I think I made my point clear on that one, but
Yeah,
I don't see any problem with the way we've got it. We're protecting the residential areas alongside. I know
that's a big thing.
they could have grow lights on all night long there.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Even though it requires buffers and stuff, but
That'll be a nice one when Wisconsin goes that route. We'll have
yeah.
to deal with cannabis.
well, you can already grow it, just not, no THC.
Sean, say again, please.
You can already grow it. You can already get permits to grow plants, but
Right.
just can't have THC in them.
So what would be the point?
Well,
Okay.
that's what is it called? That oil. CBD oil.
Oh, that point, yes, that.
On
Okay,
page,
Sean, do you have enough
Yeah,
identified here?
I think so. Dan had another comment.
are we moving on?
Well, I was just gonna
Okay.
ask for a motion to,
Oh,
yeah, we've got,
I've got a few other things I'd like to go over.
okay, so let's stay on 300. the
Yeah,
conditional use.
that's
Okay,
where I'm
let's
at.
go to the next one. Good.
I'm on page 4, Paren 10, continuation of existing conditional permits. That should be Paren 9.
Page 4.
I'm sorry, Dan, where were you, please?
Isn't,
I've got 8 transfer, 9 termination, 10 continuation.
9, maybe I've got a wrong copy here, I don't know.
Oh,
can I see your copy?
Yeah,
I'm looking at something November 2020 draft. Maybe, is that the one that Macy?
this is the one
That's not what my copy looks like.
this is the one I just picked up. No, probably Friday?
Well, the way that the draft that I have says, it goes from 8 transfer conditional, then 9 termination, and then 10 is continuation of existing conditional use.
So 9 was added in there someplace, okay.
Yes.
Then I've got page 10. I think I was probably missing when we reviewed some of this. Under in-law units, paren 8E, I'm on page 10 in my copy here.
Okay. What number is that?
It's number 8, in-law units.
Okay, hang on.
8E,
Right, it's page 13 of the November 20th deck. Okay,
Okay.
8E isn't, okay?
the village board, upon receipt of a recommendation from the plan commission, may determine that it is appropriate to have an interior door between the living units. What determines that? It says may determine, plan commission may determine. On what criteria are we basing that on? If all the ordinances that I've ever used required some type of a common space for an in-law unit so that it could not be used for a duplex.
A rental unit.
Right.
Well, it's already gonna get a deed restriction, right? Basically says who can live there, who can't.
Right, and that's my next question. Who enforces that deed restriction when mother dies? Do we go back and review those?
No, only if there'd be a complaint from somebody. I mean, we can't check on every deed restriction ever issued for everything, just impossible. We gotta set the,
Well, how many in-law units do we have, though, that we've approved in the town?
yeah, but we put deed restrictions on properties all over the place, not just in-law units,
Yeah,
but for any
but-
number of purposes, for using your accessory
Right.
building for commercial uses, for whatever it is, and we'd never know about any violation until someone complains about it. I don't know how we'd ever know. I mean,
But does F kind of satisfy the question, though, Dan?
Dan.
That's what I'm questioning now.
Well, it says Waukesha County Register of Deeds office prior to issuance of the building permit.
So let's talk about E for a second. What if someone came in and said, my mom is gonna live next door in an in-law unit? We, you know, are you saying that you're questioning, you think there should have a door between units? Because then it qualifies for sure as a,
Right. Well, it says may determine. There's no criteria for requiring it or not requiring it.
yeah, we haven't talked about in-law units in any substantive manner. I know there was some time spent on, when the zoning ordinance was adopted, to establish this particular condition with, this conditional use with these conditions, and so it looked like there was some valid conditions here. That's why we didn't strike it. We didn't spend any time discussing this specific one.
Yeah.
So
If you,
On the South property, you weren't on a plan commission when we approved that in-law unit.
which property?
Linda Sells on Hunter's Run. The existing home, they were gonna build a mother-in-law unit, and we had a door.
I don't recall that one. But
right, so Dan's saying the door should be basically requirement for in-law units.
Right, I was just gonna ask you that, Dan. Do you think a door
Well, the
interior door
ordinance-
between living units should be a requirement, therefore, you know, because it's supposed to be an in-law? In other words, the person's supposed to be a blood or a,
Right.
well, maybe not a blood relative.
But even if you just have a door, all you gotta do is put a deadbolt lock on
Lock it
there.
up and never use it.
Now you got 2 separate units, but all the ordinances that I've used in the past, it had to work with, required some type of a common space, common living room or
Oh, I see.
common foyer, or that you could move in between the two.
But they're separate.
Well,
Right.
there's a common entrance that's required.
Right.
No, that's right,
Right. Oh, we're just setting up ourselves for failure there.
But the common entrance gets at that somewhat. That's your common space is the entrance.
You can have one door and then you have a little hallway and this door goes into that unit, this door goes into that unit. It's still pretty much separate. But
Well, we definitely didn't spend any time on this so far.
Yeah, I didn't.
Do you,
I know,
do you have a
it just-
suggest, do you have a suggestion? I mean, to.
Well, it
to
looked
just-
kind of ambiguous to me as to how we determine that. Why even have it in there if it's, there's no criteria as to how to require it, but
You're right.
Or just require it for everybody.
Just say it's required to have an interior door. between
Right.
units.
Yeah, one way or the other, don't make it permissive, just
right.
say you don't
Well,
need it or you do need it.
But then we get into the fact that, does it have to be a door? Does there have to be a door at all? Can it just be an open connection between
Well,
the two?
A
right?
door or interior opening between the
Right.
living units.
That would work.
You think taking out the word may?
So shall have an interior door,
Have an interior opening?
door or opening. Or opening would satisfy all concerns, right? 'Cause it-
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so you'd say the residence shall, right?
Yeah.
Shall have an interior door or opening between the living units, something like that.
Yeah.
Correct.
Good point, Dan.
Now watch, someone's gonna come forward with one of these and say, we can't have a door and here's why.
Well, we
That's
said
why you're
interior
here,
door or
Sean.
opening,
Yeah.
right, Sean? Right, Dan? Sean?
What I'm saying is that they'll argue the flip side of this. I don't know why we'd
Oh.
ever not wanna have a connection between the two. Right, if it's a
Right.
bona fide in-law unit, why would it have to be completely sealed?
Exactly, right.
I got him, yeah, I'll get him to you.
Yeah, we gotta make sure we pick them up.
Yeah, I'll send you an
we-
updated copy.
Okay, Dan, you got another one?
Have the wording on that.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know if my copy is correct here, so I guess we'll just leave it go at that.
Okay, so you had nothing further, Dan?
No.
Any of the plan or board have anything further? Everybody understands the Attorney Macy's comment about those three items, and we're still keeping them out. It's not like we can't come back and put them back in. Even in a permanent function. But in the meantime, we're protected to some degree from Act 67 if they're not in here. If they're not in here, there's nothing to apply for.
That doesn't exist anymore. They would have to
Took that out.
amend the zoning ordinance to add the conditional use in.
Right, right. Well, quite frankly, this should have been done 2 years ago, so I'd like to get it done tonight if we could, so. Is there any discussion, and we'll figure out a motion here. So Sean, the motion from the Plan Commission would be a recommendation to the village board to approve. I guess we're approving these ordinances, not necessarily this document, but the ordinances, which incorporates. Yeah.
Approving the ordinance to adopt the changes to the Village of Vernon zoning code. Yes, as listed here, correct. And including the discussion and changes
Subject
made
to.
tonight.
9, and then, and subject to, what does Attorney Macy say, subject to the village planner putting it into final form and legal review.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Discussion by the Plan Commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Village Board, so we would just concur, and then we'll repeat the motion.
I'll make a motion to concur with the planning commission's recommendation.
Is there a second? I'll second it. Discussion by the Village Board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Excellent. Now let's go to the next one, which is actually the next two, but they're all part of the same. They're put in the same ordinance, right, Karen?
Yeah, yeah.
So 200-9 subdivision definition, 200-27 residential development control. No public comments on those, and I know we had many plan commission and meetings about it too.
The residential development control? Yeah, I think the subdivision definition is kind of a no-brainer. And we did our best with the residential development control. I guess we tested it out in the Pheasant Run subdivision to see how it worked. I think we found it worked well. It actually would not have passed without some additional modifications, such as removing the environmental corridor from some of the lots. That would have put them over the
That would
top.
put 'em over the
So it could have gotten there. I think it's tough. It's sort of arbitrary because you're setting these numbers up, you're adding totals up and trying to weight them properly. But until we use it a couple more times, I'm not sure. We did the
Yeah.
best we could, but it may need tweaks down the line if we think, hey, not so much. The good thing is that the Plan Commission, it's a guideline, and the Plan Commission has the right to sort of interpolate between minimum, maximum, and so if you find something is clearly amiss when reviewing a subdivision with it, I think we can make it right if it absolutely needs to be.
So we are looking for Plan Commission, a motion from the Plan Commission to recommend approval to the Village Board, as in the agenda, B 2020-05, and, right,
I'll make that motion.
and subject to, again,
Planners,
yep,
attorney's comment.
putting it in final form and legal review.
I'll second.
Good, Karen, you got it? Okay, Sean, good motion, you think?
Yep.
Okay, any discussion by Plan Commission, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Village Board action, so to, okay, concur,
with the planning commission.
subject to and all that.
And I'll second that.
Okay, good. Discussion by Village Board. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Okay, now we are on, thank you for that, everyone. 11, Vernon Floodplain Ordinance. And we need to do three things here. Plan Commission recommendation, Village Board approval if, or following the recommendation, concurring with the recommendation to approve, and the resolution. What was that from? Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you.
Okay, floodplain ordinance. John, I think you've gone through it enough times. Again, we didn't have any public comment.
There's not much to discuss. It's a model ordinance with a few best practice tweaks. Floodplain ordinance is what it is. There's only certain things you can and can't do in the floodplain per DNR.
I've got one item to discuss. On page 23,
Yeah.
Pren D, towards the bottom.
Hang on.
Where the board has to notify the applicant that his insurance may increase. Why put numbers in there?
What, give me the numbers of the section.
Yeah, I don't see that on page 23.
7.3 Pren 4, Pren D.
Okay, hang on. 7.3, print 4,
Under the variance section.
under variances.
This is
The-
Yes.
Board of Appeals variance.
When
Right.
it says when a floodplain variance is granted, the board shall notify that section or that
Right,
paragraph? Okay.
right.
Yeah, Dan, we just wanted to make sure we were on the same.
Yeah, I don't know specifically, I just know that that was a DNR requirement to have it in there. So if the board is going to grant some deviation, the Board of Appeals is going to grant some deviation, it's their responsibility then to let them know
That it could
could
increase, but
increase.
why have a number there? That number could go up next year. I don't, do we have to change our ordinance then, or?
I don't know. We also have to change our ordinance when the new floodplain maps come out. So when those are updated next year for
Yeah.
areas of the Fox River, we have to update our ordinance at that time too, to incorporate the new panel numbers and the new dates, so.
Can we just say it, your premiums may increase? We don't have to put a number in, do we?
I can ask if you want. If you don't want to adopt tonight, I can find out. I don't know the answer. I didn't ask him
Because,
specifically.
you know, certain insurance companies may require that it be $35 per hundred, and then they're gonna come back at us and say, well, you told me it was only gonna go up $25 per hundred.
Right,
Yeah.
unless there's a state or federal law that limits it to $25.
It could be. I don't know the answer.
Speculating.
I read that as if it was the minimum number, then we would have to report it. If it was only gonna go up to $18, then we wouldn't have to,
But who are we to say?
I just did.
You know.
I mean, if it's in the ordinance, you know, you wouldn't have to report it to the DNR or to anybody else. If it was less than that.
And why have it in there at all is my
Because it might be
question.
worded in that. And then the DNR and the county would wanna know about it.
Yeah.
That's the way I
right.
read it.
The bottom line is I can't answer that tonight, so if you want more information, we'll have to bring it back. We're already past the timeline.
But inevitably, it's gonna change.
But these are based on your recommendations you received from DNR, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so,
It could be, I'm pulling some up for the homeowners, the Flood Insurance Affordability Act, and it mentions the $25 per $100.
yeah, if we're adapting the guidelines of the DNR, I don't think we need to mess with it.
Sean, go over, can you refresh at least my recollection? So if we adopt this tonight, adopt that resolution, it goes to the DNR, right?
So this will go along with an application to the DNR and then FEMA as well,
Okay,
to join the National Flood Insurance Program. So this is, the ordinance is part of it, the resolution's part of it, the application's part of it.
Yep.
And once they have all those pieces, then they either approve it or don't. I don't know why they wouldn't approve it, but,
at that point.
and then then the ordinance is on the books, and then we're part of the program. Still looking to see if I can find.
So Sean, are you gonna check into this $25?
I'm trying to do it on the fly, but
not anymore. Well, officially, I think I am, yeah.
I know you and Fred, have you ever received anything from anyone, DNR, FEMA?
No,
Both FEMA and DNR, and they're waiting for stuff to come from the DNR before FEMA will recognize that in fact we are not part of the floodplain. I don't know what you've heard, but that's.
I haven't, only what you told me.
And take it to the bank.
Yeah.
It's truthful. And it's very frustrating,
Yeah,
because I've sent them maps and everything else doesn't mean do.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm stuck.
Yeah.
But I wanna clear it before my demise, and Carol has to do it.
well, if nobody else has a problem
Well,
with it, I don't, just go ahead.
I'm having a hard time finding specific information.
Yeah,
Dan, I
yeah.
think your point's well taken.
Well, when you put in a monetary amount like that, you know it's gonna change eventually, but I'd have to,
Well, and I've dealt with insurance long enough.
yeah.
as long as we didn't make it up, that works.
Or if you could even say per DNR, or per FEMA, or per somebody,
Well, it's their adaption, yeah, so.
you know, so you
Yeah,
defaults, and we're not
that's what Dan
No,
says.
it's
Putting it in final form and legal.
Yeah, it should be up to us to tell them that it's gonna go up, but to give put an amount like that, no, I don't know.
No,
Well,
DNR
like I say,
does,
it could
right?
be because
Yeah.
that's the max that could go up by law,
Point the finger.
and that's where it comes from. Right, and this is a notice, requirement by
I don't think so.
ordinance that all we have to do is, if we
Right
grant a
next door to
variance,
Fred on
put it in your
Longview Drive.
variance. Just like a disclaimer at the
Oh,
bottom of your
okay.
variance.
I will tell you, I'm looking at other
There's a
floodplain
creek in the
ordinances.
back there,
It's
but
the same language in other
We
ordinances.
never were in a floodplain, and then when they
I think it is standard.
redid it, or FEMA came in and said, expanded it without doing any groundwork. then
Oh,
we
So
were
for
at that
instance,
point.
I'm looking at the city of Milwaukee's
Right,
ordinance
so
right now. It's the
now
exact same language.
They're revising it and taking it back to where it was.
So that $25 per
In
100 must
meantime,
be
a lot of
limited
people
by FEMA.
Had problems
It-
with it.
Oh,
The
yeah.
increase must be limited by FEMA. That number is all over the place in everybody else's ordinance.
2 years.
Okay.
Sure.
So it is what it is. I think, like I said, it must be a limit so that if it's done, they can't increase the flood insurance by more than $25 for every 100, no matter what. So,
That's fine then, I guess.
Mine is only administrative, okay, is, I'm not, I see the numbering of pages, okay? The signature page for the president is 28, but 28 is part of the text. And now maybe I'm doing something wrong, and I would think that signature page should be 32 rather than 28.
oh, is that part of the actual I don't have that information. That's part of the adopting ordinance.
That's going to planner and to legal, so it's not in final format.
Right.
There's a big disclaimer right on it.
Just the wording.
Okay, sounds good.
Just the wording, because I don't see.
Sean, you got that down, or Karen, you have that down?
We'll double check that.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Whatever you want to do is fine with me. If it stays that way, it stays that way.
Yeah, we'll get it right.
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, so we'd be looking for a plan commission, a motion to recommend approval by the, Village of Vernon Board for what, V 2020-06?
Right.
Ordinance to adopt the Village of Vernon floodplain ordinance, subject to the village planner putting it into final form and legal review.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, second.
Further discussion by plan commission. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Village board, so we're looking for a motion to concur with the plan commission recommendation, of course, with all the ordinance language and putting it in, village planner putting it in final form and legal review.
I'll make the motion, but should I?
Sure,
Okay, I'll make that motion.
make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second.
What?
Uh,
The only reason I didn't is that I was already part of the previous motion.
Oh, that's fine. Any discussion by the board, village board, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, motion carries. Resolution, here, Attorney Macy says it is in final form, yes? Yes. Okay,
And DNR has seen it and is fine with it as well.
it's fine with it as well. You're fine with it too, Sean, of course. So we're just looking for, who does this? It's just the village board. So we're looking for a motion by the village board to approve resolution number, do we have a number?
I'll make a motion that we accept resolution V 2020-06.
Approve. Approve, you meant? Not
Yes.
accept, approve, okay.
I'm
I didn't
sorry.
hear the yes. I'll second that motion. Board, any discussion on the motion or the resolution? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Unanimous. All right. Yay, thank you, everyone. Item 12 is just a I, well,
We needed that.
Wake us up.
Yeah.
He's awake now, yeah.
Well, we will now recess for 3 minutes for a dance.
3 minutes for, say again?
For a dance.
For a dance.
Oh, COVID dance.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry.
All right, so Sean, we put this on just so you could give a report to both the Plan Commission and the board about your discussion with the Village of Big Bend planner. This is not an action item, just an information item. So Sean?
Sure, thank you. So I was asked to contact Mary Sensky, the Village of Big Bend planner, just to kick off discussions with them in terms of land use surrounding our borders, and so I did. And we took a look at each other's maps and talked about zoning and land use specifically around the borders between the two communities. I'd mentioned that we'd recently updated our land use plan, specifically around the borders of the Village of Big Bend at the time we were a town. And I specifically said the intent was to ensure that not only were the land uses compatible, but that our densities surrounding their village were at least as dense as theirs. And I was forthcoming in terms of the idea was that someone wasn't going to get a better deal in one place or the other. It was going to be, they wouldn't have a reason to annex to Big Bend, for instance, because they couldn't get a certain density. And so she understood that. We talked about I just mentioned that we have agreements now, joint planning areas with the town of McGuanago and the Village of Waukesha for the joint planning areas and what that entails. So we basically have to convene with those bodies if we're going to make changes to the land use plan in those areas. She mentioned that they're going to be updating their land use plan, their comprehensive plan, probably next year when census data is available, similar to what we talked about. Doesn't make sense to do it before that. And I suggested, and she concurred, that when that happens, we should at least maybe have one meeting between the two communities, if possible, to talk about land uses on the borders. That was just a suggestion. Of course, that's going to be up to the Plan Commission and the boards of the respective communities, but wouldn't be a bad idea to at least get together and review future land uses, existing land uses. We also talked about recent developments in Vernon and Big Bend. There's not a ton going on in Big Bend recently, but I did mention our new subdivision in Pheasant Run and some of the commercial uses that have been recently approved near National Avenue and so on in Vernon, just to bring her up to speed. We discussed the sewer, the utilities, the planning for utilities in Big Bend, and where that's at. I'm sure most of you know where that's at, that there's existing sanitary main in 164. We talked about that. We talked about future developments that might require that in the Village of Big Bend. There's an industrial development that's going in that doesn't need it at first, that is going to put their own sanitary system in, but would like connection to the sanitary sewer at some point. We talked about the fact that extension of the sanitary sewer north of the freeway is challenging and problematic and costly, and that would be something, if it ever happened, would be probably in the future. That wouldn't be something that happened right away. Talked about their plans for water and their water tower. The discussion was very general, in general sense, just to get a feel for where each community was. I've never talked to her before, so this is a first for me, just to get the ball rolling. I think, if it doesn't go anywhere else but a meeting with the Village of Big Bend for long-range planning at some point when we do our comprehensive plans, I think that would be great. But as it stands now, I'm sure she's going back to her Plan Commission and board to give them a similar report, but it's up to you, where things go from here.
Did you get an opportunity to talk with Mary regarding that subdivision that?
Harvest View?
Harvest?
Yes.
Yeah, we did talk about Harvest View. Yeah, we did.
I thought
Go
just
ahead.
thought that was a good example of what the shared services concept was all about, even though,
Sure.
you
We,
know, the outcome. But, you know, that wouldn't have happened a couple of years ago. We never would have been.
the agreement, the extension of the developer agreement and so on. We did touch on Harvest View. We didn't get into the weeds on it, but yeah, we definitely did talk about it. We discussed the developers agreement and the extension. So yeah, we touched on most topical things.
They did say that Warren, the village president, Big Ben, did say they extended it.
They did extend it for 2 more years.
Similar to what we did.
Correct. So basically kick the can down the road. I think everybody anticipates that when that is developed, I think they're looking for updated construction plans and stormwater plans, more modern, basically more modern standards for what was approved. I think it was 2006.
I've just got a question, isn't regarding the plan commission, but under the heading of shared services, are they talking about mutual aid in there too?
We didn't talk about
They
that.
didn't talk at all, okay.
Just planning.
Just planning, yeah. Yeah, okay.
Anything else? John, any questions about the report? Otherwise, there's
No, that's it. Just very, very general, and so it's on everybody's radar.
Well, I think the consensus of our.
Thank you, Sean.
Sure.
Plan commission and board is that it would be helpful to start the dialogue on planning, and like you said, you know,
Yeah, well, there's
coming fall, 21 in the fall, or later, I suppose, when the census information comes out. They'll be
right.
taking a look at ours, and they'll be taking a look
Yeah,
at theirs.
we
and
obviously
we'll
don't
have
need a
meeting.
boundary agreement with them at this point, but some kind of look at planning because our communities are so integrated. I mean, our boundaries between the two communities is fairly extensive.
Yeah, there's a lot more linear feet than there needs to be.
Right.
Let's put it that way. Okay, any other questions? We'll go on to minutes. October 14, 2020, Village Board and Plan Commission minutes. I did have
President?
some changes,
I did make all those changes, Mr. President.
just mostly.
Are they incorporated in the
No, he just gave them to me right before. They're just a period of.
grammar or something?
Yeah. just
Yeah,
Okay.
formatting,
Formatting.
extra word here or there that needed to be swapped.
Tweaking.
Okay, then I make a motion that we approve sorry, are you referring to the planning commission?
I think we need to have a Plan Commission motion
Right.
first. Yep.
Okay, make a motion to approve the planning commission minutes of October 14th.
Is there a second? I'll second.
Okay, go ahead.
As changed, right, as modified?
As modified, excuse
Yep.
me.
I'll second then. Any further discussion? Plan Commission, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We might as well. Motion for the village board. Is there a second? Any discussion by village board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. November 11. I didn't see anything in there, so.
Make a
First,
motion to approve.
Plan Commission
Sorry.
first.
Jim,
approve?
are you doing- I'll make a motion to approve the planning commission meeting minutes of November 11th.
Any discussion, Plan Commission? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Village board
I'll make the motion,
to approve.
same motion to approve.
Is there a
I'll
second?
second.
Second by trustee Mahalik. Any discussion by the board? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Can I make a motion to adjourn the planning commission?
Is there a second?
Second. It was a race.
All in favor, Plan Commission?
Aye.
Opposed? Plan Commission's adjourned. Village board,
Somebody else? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn the village board.
is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Village board's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. 9:25.
We got 9:27 on our first.